My name is Andrew Taylor, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you to the second season of Stick With It. Last season we had the fantastic host, Mark Hoffmeyer. Without his tremendous work and the fantastic interviews and guests he had, we wouldn't be back for a second season. This season, some amazing guests, so I'll invite you now to settle in, relax and enjoy Stick With It. Welcome back to Stick With It. Today's guest is Captain Sharelle Quinn, retired, one of Qantas's first two female pilots and Australia's first female Qantas captain. We're celebrating perseverance and honouring those women who paved the runway for the next generation. Flight Safety International and Australian Aviation lists Sharelle among the top 5 pioneering women in Australian aviation, alongside Millicent Bryant, Nancy Bird Walton, Mary Bell and Deborah Lawrie. Welcome, Sharelle.
Thank you.
Did you realise you were on that list?
No. I've met Nancy, so she's right up there in her history, which I don't think I could come close to. And she's got a long and varied success from when almost no women were in aviation in Australia at all. So, but I must say, many years ago, there was a People magazine, I think, was sent to. I had lots of things sent in the mail to me of articles about me. I guess they just wanted to share them. And they had ranking of 3 interesting people for the month. And I was always very excited because I starred above Dolly Parton, which I thought was rather interesting.
Well, absolutely. It's interesting. Yeah, we love interesting people. That's one of the great things about doing this podcast is I get to choose who I want to talk to. And I hopefully am choosing the most interesting people possible. So you're the first woman we've ever spoken to. So welcome.
Okay.
Another pioneering thing for Australian aviation. So let's go back all the way back to the beginning. Can you remember at how big, how small you were when you first decided, I think I might want to go flying?
I do actually. I was in primary, 4th grade. I'm not sure what you call it now.
4th grade's good.
4th grade. You leave in 6th grade for those who are younger. And Qantas, I believe, had a stamp competition, a stamp designing competition. Now, nobody else probably remembers this except me because I got second prize, which is very exciting. I got second prize because I spelt Qantas with a U, having no real idea what Qantas stood for. So second prize you'd think was good. And then when we came to accept the prizes, it's a ride in a 4-seater aircraft, single engine. And unfortunately, second prize was in the back seat. And you're allowed to take someone. I took my mum. And the first prize winner was in the front seat with the pilot. And I really think I desperately didn't want to be in the back seat of anything because, all the fun and excitement, what's happening's in the front. And I couldn't see anything because I was small. And I think that planted the seed of wanting to get in the front seat of an aircraft. That's all I can put it down to because no one else in my family ever flew, had anything to do with aircraft. In fact, I'd never gone overseas till after I joined Qantas in an aircraft. So that's what I can put it down to.
Well, it's very vivid recollection, really, isn't it? And at any point did you waver during high school thinking, oh, this is not going to be possible? Or
Well, then no one in my family had gone to second education, for example, university.
Yep.
So my mum and dad gave up a lot, night shift, day shift, to put me through and help me get through university. So a little bit of pressure there, and I chose geology. And in my 3rd year, I think Macquarie Uni is where I went in Sydney, is underneath the flight path of Sydney Airport. And of course, they went past all the time and all the windows were there and highly distracting. And so by my end of my last 3rd year in university, last term, I decided to pursue that interest. And I mentioned to my parents that I was going to just, step away from university and learn to fly. Well, that was my mother saying over my dead body, would I be allowed to do that? So I finished university and that's when I started learning to fly, my 3rd year of uni. And so I finished the degree and at the end of that year I had my private licence and then went from there.
So that was under the old McCoy Hawks, the 1-6 localiser to Sydney.
That's right.
Absolutely, before the 2 runways, of course.
Yes, that's right. So I think, and my parents, everybody then, when you went to get your aviation medical, the doctor even said, oh, this is for sports. This is for a sport, recreation. I said, well, no, actually, I want to have a career. And it was never looked at like that from anyone outside myself. And it's very dubious, and I didn't know why. I mean, I'm an only child brought up really not preferring boy things and girl things. So it was a very even childhood, and I wasn't really aware that a lot of things weren't available then.
Well, that's a great thing
for women.
Of not having anyone involved. You didn't know that you couldn't be involved.
No.
Did you ever get out and look at rocks? I did geology in first year uni.
No, I had my big boots and I had my rock pick from my parents as a present. And no, I enjoyed. I still collect. In fact, I don't know if I should. I've got a piece of the Grand Canyon in my.
You're still carrying that around in your handbag?
No, in my rock case.
Oh, yeah.
No, big display case, which was soaked for many days to clear it through customs. So it's a big piece of the Grand Canyon. So I still do enjoy that, but I decided I would enjoy being above the ground more than looking under the ground,
which is
say.
Completely understandable.
Yes.
So finish university, getting a private license, then off to get a job to get a commercial license. Is that?
Well, back then, it's not back then, I feel like old when I keep saying back then.
Well, it happens to all of us.
We were very lucky because the government had TAFE training for theory. I would never have been able to afford it without having that sort of, or knowing where to go.
Yep, so Sydney TAFE here in Sydney.
Sydney TAFE. So I'd get on the motorbike and had a little 125, couldn't afford a car, so I had a little bike. And I'd go to Central from Liverpool and do the private course. And after university, I did my commercial and senior commercial. And before that, I'd done private theory. Very good teachers. And you're surrounded by like-minded people, which is what makes it really good. The class was full, so you get that camaraderie around you as you're learning and struggling through all the theory. And the teachers were a wealth of information. But there
couldn't have been many like-minded people. So you're a female on a motorbike, geology major.
There weren't any other girls
there. There can't have been too many geology motorbike riding girls in the class, were there?
I used to sit at the back of the class because then I didn't feel like anybody was looking.
And did the boys pay any attention? They just went, whatever, Sharelle up the back? Yeah,
not
absolutely.
Really. I think once you show that you're like-minded and you're really interested in the same things and you talk about the same things, it sort of disappears. And I didn't really know I was any different. I didn't have any sisters or brothers, so I just talked as I talked to my parents, which I think sometimes can raise a level of conversation. You know what I mean? It's I don't know how to explain it. It's my personal experience. So I think I really enjoyed the TAFE, but I wanted to speed things up because when I finished my private theory in the end of university, I'd saved up for a trip to the States for a holiday back when it was $600 return. So you bought it a year in advance. And I went to Sydney Airport and I had my mum with me. And I said, I can't go. I said, all these pilots walking past with their uniforms and hats in the terminal. And I desperately said, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. Or just fly. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to cancel and go home and do my flying training. But, over my dead body again. So
away you went.
Away I went. So when I came back, that's when I went into part-time jobs and just put myself through even the petrol getting to and from TAFE and the theory. So I did commercial during the day and senior commercial at night. So the day went from 8 till 4 and then the night went from 6 till 9. And then I had a 10 o'clock night job at Bankstown Airport in a bakery factory. I hated big roller doors. It was always about -2.
Freezing cold, absolutely.
Yeah, and then I used to do the dinner time at 2 a.m. was dinner and I'd be swatting over my theory. And then that would finish at 6 and I'd go home and then leave and be 8 till 4 and 4 till 6 till 9. And it'd go on 4 days a week and I'd fly 1 hour on the weekend. And the rest of the weekend I'd just sit there at the flying school absorbing the atmosphere, which is what it's about, isn't it?
So it's seeped into your bloodstream by just being around aeroplanes, absolutely.
It's because you can't afford to do it. You can be there.
Yep.
And it's contacts. And learning from others, it's really important, I think.
At that stage, did anyone say, oh, you're going to enjoy being a private pilot and this is a hobby and good luck with that?
No.
Fantastic. Were there any women working at Bankstown? Or
one. There was one flying instructor.
Yes.
But that there wasn't a role model to me because I didn't feel like I was just there. It's hard to explain, but I didn't need a role model. I was just there anyway, and she happened to be there. So I was already there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And a flying job came eventually?
Yes. I quite happy being there again, the opportunities with other private pilots who are maybe an architect or a builder. So I met an architect at a family, and he asked me if I could fly him when he needed me. You know, his personal pilot. It was very exciting.
Yeah,
$50
awesome.
for half a day and $100 for a whole day. And I had an instrument rating, single engine. So just start small. You don't have to aim too high to start with. And that would build my hours. And I did an instructor rating after working at the cake factory for a while. That was enough money. And then I managed to get a job going to Northern Territory. But only when someone else went to Brisbane to do exams, I got sent up there for 2 or 3 months, flying in, you know, the Aboriginals back and forth and doctors to their settlements. And, yeah, so that little opportunities, you just take them whenever they're offered.
Post-cyclone, Tracy, Darwin would have certainly still been the Wild West in the early 80s,
It was.
late 70s, early 80s.
I didn't get to the big smoke. I was sent to Gove, Nullarbor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which everything, I had, unfortunately, a white shirt. Everything came home red.
Yeah.
And used to, I had a couple of aircraft, a training aircraft with an old lawnmower pull, like a 150, and then another trainer, a 172, I think. And then a charter plane was a 206, which used to take all the seats out and fill it with bread and bananas and fly it to Brood Island. That was my first overwater flight. So you took off out of Gove and you thought, I hope it's out there. You know,
of course, this was pre-GPS and all that, where we used to use a map and we had a watch and heading for a time.
Yes.
And believe it or not, that works.
That's right. And dead reckoning around thunderstorms and having your passengers, the Aboriginals didn't like the thunderstorms much.
Scared passengers.
Kept yelling at me. And
absolutely.
they'd bring on their snakes and turtles and spears. I had spears across one shoulder from the tail to the nose to fit it in, and all sorts of interesting carry-ons, and waiting for doctors to visit the locals at their strips, and being, you know, it was so hot. It was summer in Northern Territory. And so I had to build a little fire away from the aircraft with some fuel to stand in the smoke to keep the mosquitoes from eating me alive, because it was, you know, it wasn't the best, but you don't notice. When you're young and you want to fly and it's exciting, you just deal with it, don't you?
I had a mate who'll know I'm talking about, who lived in the Territory for 2 years in a caravan with no television and no air conditioning. And this was in the 90s. This wasn't in the 80s or the 70s.
Yeah, I was in a similar caravan, just a big square on jacks in Gove.
He lived in, no TV, no internet, believe it or not, and no air conditioning for 2 years while he was in the Territory.
Well, the best thing to do on my one day off was they had an old Kingswood there as part of the school. It was a school and a charter organisation. And I used to drive the Kingswood into the shopping centre just to go into Woolies to get the air conditioning. The best part of my day was wandering around the cold food section. So
it was nice.
It was nice and cool.
So did you think, you've made it, this is what I wanted to do and now I'm doing it? Were you content with saying, if I'm an instructor and a charter pilot for the rest of my career, I will be happy with that? Or you still have the burning ambition that there was more out there?
Well, that's what I mean about looking not too far ahead. Some people do, and some people step at a time. So for me, I wanted to be an instructor, and then I wanted to be the number one instructor, not meant the best. That meant a grade one
instructor. Yes,
a grade one meant you had all the training needed to do most things. And then I saw an ad in the paper one day. I distinctly remember being at home with my parents and just reading through the paper, and had a big ad for Qantas advertising for pilots. And I went through, basic gas turbine theory, 1,000 hours in command, which was quite high then.
Yes, it would have been. And
all the subjects, the ATPL seniors that I had. And I thought, I've got all that. I might apply to that. And Dad said, they don't take girls. I said, well, what do you mean they don't take girls or women? And I said, I'm going to apply anyway. So it was a lack of understanding, because I didn't have that in my vision.
Well, how did your father have that, do you think?
So therefore I didn't have that research. I didn't have an application in. Yep. I just saw the ad.
And was your father protecting you, do you think, or he honestly thought that that wasn't a job that a girl could get? Or
Dad's from World War II era, and, he tough bloke.
Absolutely.
And it wouldn't have crossed his mind either that opportunity was even there.
Yep.
So I think he was just stating what he thought was a fact.
And he never said to you at any point during that time, trying to protect his darling daughter, that,
no,
geology's a good job?
No.
And they never did, your parents. What a wonderful thing, isn't it?
So this sort of let me, Mum was, they, as we all do, we chip in with our advice, trying to steer our kids one way or the other. And so, as I said, I finished the university degree, so at least, you
had a
it's a
plan
good
B
backup.
in there,
Yes,
right?
and I didn't think about that then. They did.
Yeah. Well, we're very close to the Qantas headquarters, the old Qantas headquarters here in the studio. So CV in the post, put a stamp on it, threw it in the mail and went back to work.
Yeah, and I was working at Rex back then. I don't think it's even there now, at Bankstown. Instructor, charter, and it was always part-time. You could never get a full-time job.
Absolutely.
It's not possible. Well, I didn't get a full-time job. And you used to send letters to every single company in Australia you could think of who might want a pilot. And sometimes it's just luck of the draw. It's if you're there or at the right time. So, and people still do that now. It's a bit disheartening, but you don't give up. So, and then 2 weeks, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks after, I got a reply saying to come in and do the theory test. I think I went for about 8 hours. It was a big day.
It was brutal, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, absolutely.
The psychology, the
It's
maths.
frightening.
But I enjoyed it. I like maths, so you can finish the paper and then I'd go back and check it all and I'd check it again. But I really enjoyed the maths.
Wasn't my
I didn't like the
experience,
psychology
no.
much, but the maths is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, I felt quite confident after that. And then I think you had to do a Seminole or twin engine flight using the old NDB letdowns over some, I forget where it was. And so I did a few hours training in a Seminole just to get myself up to speed, as you would prepare for anything.
Absolutely.
And then I had the interview at Qantas.
And that would have been middle to late age men, all in suits, all with horn rim glasses and slick back hair.
They're all captains.
Yes.
And there was a female to my right, which remember she was.
She would have been the tea lady or the.
No, she was like seemed to me like a bit of a psychologist or an analysis of watching you. I just felt that.
Yep.
I'm not sure. There were about 8. There were a lot of them, 8 of them there, I think, at least. It was a big. I just remember all these men at the end of the room, and they asked me a couple of interesting questions. Can I say what they asked me?
Please do, absolutely. You can.
And you know how you ring around and you ask how to prepare for
what
an
did you
interview?
get asked?
What did you get asked? And what do you have to know? And where do we fly? And what types have we got? And how many planes have we got? And I go, oh my God, how am I going to remember all this?
Absolutely.
And so when I went in, that's what they said. The first question was, so where do we fly? And I thought, And along the wall on my left was this huge map like you see in the Qantas magazine when you get on a plane. And it had all the route structure.
Had the arcs and where they flew to.
Yeah. And I looked up and I said, well, looks like you fly just about everywhere. I said, in fact, I don't care where you fly. I just want to fly. So and they sort of, I think they were ready for the canned answer.
And you just came back and gave them an honest answer.
I couldn't be bothered doing that when I was preparing. I didn't want to do that sort of thing.
Yes.
So I just said, well, you fly everywhere but looks fit. And in fact, I don't care where you fly. And they didn't go on asking me how many aircraft types. I think they realised I probably wasn't going to be that sort of a candidate to ask that question. And they asked me, so, a really odd question. If you have children, now I was 24, how will you cope with having children and flying?
How do you answer that question?
I was not ready for that question.
No, how do you answer that?
Because I never thought about children. Anyway, so I looked at them all and I went, bit of a silence. And I said, well, probably the same thing you do with yours. Silence. So I kept throwing this bouncy ball back and forth. Yeah.
And they were probably pretty absentee fathers, so how are they going to...
Yeah, so it wasn't really any firm answer. It was just, well, whatever.
You're doing works. Why can't I do that?
Yeah, so that was a bit more silence. So I don't... It was interesting. It's a little bit different.
Incredibly nervous?
No. There was a funny bit when you had to bring in all your documents, and I had my degree, but a student of mine had put my degree on a huge glossy timber backing board, so it was about 2 feet high,
bigger than
and
you.
I had to, I couldn't get my arm. I had to carry this thing into back in the day when you took your references.
Yes.
You didn't email anything.
Carried all the bits of paper.
Yeah, I sort of had to slide that under the chair until they asked for it. It was quite interesting.
And how did you think you went? Were you confident?
I walked out of because you had several interviews, so I'm sort of putting it together. The last one where I had to sort of go out of with the degree, the tricky bit for me was what was I going to wear to the interview before I go there, before I go to the next point you asked. What do you wear? That's a little question, but it's an important one. Do you dress up like a
Like a man, yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Do you
Wear a
dress
suit.
up with a girly? What do you do? So I sort of half went with back in the day, jumpsuits were all the thing, you see. So
It's a Farrah Fawcett. Did you have
something like that?
The beach curls as well? And fantastic.
I know, but it's really funny times. So I had to decide how that would go, whereas men would just go in and you wear what you wear.
Well,
but I had to consider
absolutely
the impression that I left with them, what they expected. I don't know. It's a very subtle psychology.
These are all the things that I would have never had to think about.
No.
I had to sell my car to buy my suit for my airline interviews. And unfortunately, the suit's shrunk over the last 30-odd years. So the car's probably worth more than the suit was. But, yeah, it had to be single-breasted, dark blue suit and a white shirt and a tie.
Was I going to walk in with high heels? Was I going all that thing? I know maybe it's just something that I considered. But when I left the final interview, then I thought, I really thought, I've got that. This. I had to be confident. You have to be, because I don't think I said anything, and I had good grades.
Yes,
and I had
the qualifications.
I had the qualifications, and I'd won what do you call it, Sir Donald Anderson Award many years ago for the highest marks for the year of any pilot.
Crazy.
So for that year in all the seniors, because I did all my seniors at one sitting, all the commercials, and everything was in the 1 year. So I think that's why it was just had a lot of exams. But so it's always helpful if you can go that extra mile. It's like getting there in line for a job, even if it's when I used to work at the factory and apply every time I had a holiday, I applied for a factory job. Didn't go without. But I was always told by my father, if you're there first, you can, first in the line. So I was always there. 4 a.m, I was there waiting for that job.
Well, that's when they used to take casual labour on the day.
Yeah,
as a day
on the
piece.
day.
Yes.
Turned up at.
So you'd be first in the line to get that job. Yeah.
Mm.
And so you got a phone call. Do you remember where you were when you finally got that phone call?
I do. I was at Rex, a flying school I was at, as an instructor charter. And the secretary, she gave me the phone, and it was Qantas. And don't ask me his name. I'll think of it later. Distinctive accent. And he said, we'd like you to come and work for us. And, of course, it's right in the middle of the week, like, really? And could you come in next week? Really? So it was very exciting. And, that's as simple as it was, just a phone call 2 weeks after I finished the last interview.
Yes.
So it didn't take long.
Fantastic.
And, in fact, there was a little bit of a hiccup in the year between applying and getting a date for an interview and the final interview was that little issue. I broke my leg, but
not on your motorbike.
No. I had it was a car accident and a trailer. Anyway, so I broke my leg. That was a little bit of a setback.
Yep.
And if I can say to anyone who's listening, they're not meant to test us, but you just have to move on.
Resilience is an amazing thing in our industry, isn't it?
I had to ring up and say, that interview that we had booked for 2 weeks' time, could we just do personal reasons? Could we just move that on a little bit further, which they did. So, and then, of course, there's the incentive to have physio 5 days a week. And we didn't have private health cover and you didn't have.
Yep.
So you're just thrown into the hospital, then thrown back out onto the gutter. And, it was difficult.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you make up your own little apparatus to
make sure you're going to get fit and well.
My father screwed hooks in posts on the veranda and I go outside and exercise the leg until the day of the interview. And I was just hoping that when I sat in the chair at the end of the hour, I could get up again because, you'd set in position.
Absolutely.
So it was quite a challenge. That was my little hiccup, which put me probably 5 months later joining than maybe could have happened. But we all talk about seniority and the date of joining.
Our numbers are gold. So you joined in a big cohort, you told me earlier.
18.
But with another girl?
Yes, with Anne.
And did you know Anne prior to day one at Qantas?
No, I didn't know Anne. No.
A wonderful story and got me thinking about speaking to Sharelle. My daughter learned to fly and in her flying school there's a magnificent black and white photograph, huge, of Sharelle Quinn and Anne Bennett on the wall looking back in a jumbo when you were both second officers. So it was a big deal to join Qantas as a girl, wasn't it, in the 80s? I know you say, I'd never really felt it, but it shows you how important it is where nearly 50 years later that photograph is still on the wall of flying schools.
Yes. I mean, I had no idea. To me, it was just that is a really big plane. It just didn't.
The jumbo was massive. We've got one here on the desk. It's massive. You're
huge.
4 foot nothing, and the jumbo's huge. Did you?
Oh, I know. Look, it didn't worry me because actually the more advanced the aircraft, the more adjustable all the seats.
Yeah.
So it was harder for me to fly 172
Getting the seat in the
with
right
two
spot.
cushions than it was to fly the jumbo with nothing. Because I'd see the small Asian pilots, they're small stature,
Yes. Yeah.
and they were all flying jets. And because the rudder, I said, and everyone said, you have to make a mark of how far forward you put the seat and how far. I said, look, everything goes
Just wound it all the way
out,
straight.
fall up and fall forward. Yeah.
And how did you go with the old, well, they were old, probably my age, the flight engineers and things like this when you're doing your panel training, they must have been, because they're not pilots. A lot of them came from ground jobs or post-World War. They're different. They're a great part of the crew, but they were different to being a pilot, weren't they?
They're real people.
Absolutely, unlike us.
They've come up through the hard work and in the hangars at night and, and they've got to that top position as an engineer. But they're just a wealth of knowledge. I mean, when you saw them sitting in front of that 747 panel, that was as long as someone's dining table.
Massive.
And they knew everything.
They knew everything. And they'd expect the second officer.
Yes.
When you were sitting on the panel, you knew everything. So you were their pet where they...
Well, they knew we didn't they?
Well, they lorded it over us, didn't they, about what they did and what we didn't know.
Yeah,
so
they lived in fear of us making a mistake on their log. And their log was about 3 feet long.
They had a beautiful piece of paper. And when the flight engineer was off in the bunk having a rest, the second officer would be on the takeover and you'd get to draw dots on there.
Yeah, that's right.
But if you got it wrong,
you had to learn to fess up.
That's right. If you made a mistake on the engineer's log,
you learned how to tell them, and you learned how to deal with people, didn't you? Because you had to work with the engineer.
Yeah.
And it was really quite close because you sat beside each other, and you were relieving him, and so he had to put faith in you, and he's a really important part of the crew.
Absolutely.
Because he knew so much about the aircraft. We could always rely on him to help us understand those technical problems.
And on the jumbo, we relied on the engineer. They were at.
Yeah.
So second officer then FO training on the jumbo?
Yes, somebody put a nice big L plate behind my seat when I was training. Yes.
Did they?
Yes. So that was I really enjoyed that.
It's
really
a wonderful
exciting.
aeroplane to fly, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's really good.
And you did base training down in Avalon, so you flew the empty aeroplane?
Yes. Yes, we did. There were 5 or 6 students and 2 captains, yeah.
Went and did circuits and
You
handling.
shortest sector ever going Melbourne to Avalon.
Yeah,
Very
fantastic,
short.
wasn't it? Of course, we don't do a lot of that flying the empty aeroplane.
No.
And then command came along. So Qantas introduced the 7.6 in the late 80s, I guess?
Yes. Everybody's always dying to do the command training. You've always got your name in the hat and you're always asking, how long have I got to wait? What's happening?
And of course, in those days, there was massive big piles of paper on the allocations desk and your name was in there somewhere and it was as complicated as Billio, really, wasn't it?
So you'd always be asking.
So we just didn't know when your number was going to come up.
So I think when I was due to come up, they started getting rid of the classic aircraft. They were going to get rid of the classic aircraft, the 747. So they even had engineers get notices to leave. And some of them became pilots. And in that time, they said, there's no way there'll be any command slots on the 747. So I had my name in, but I also had my name in for 767. But I had my name in for 767 first officer, so FO to FO.
Yep.
But that was because I decided I'd give myself every chance, because changing types and moving rank to be the boss of a type you've never flown is a really big ask.
And that you probably didn't realise, but that sim we had for the 767, the sim number 2, that was horrible to fly.
Yeah, very like flying a pinhead on a...
It was so difficult to go and do command training. So you change seat, you change type.
Yes.
It was brutal. So it made sense to go and have a look at it as an FO.
A lot don't, but you had a lot of people fall over not doing it. So I
yes.
decided I would take the risk and go to first officer, which took 4 months, usually 4 to 5 months every training package. And when I finished the ground school, which were really just carousels, watching slides.
We literally had these round slides. We sat on this crazy machine. You press play and you hope they work.
Whereas the old days when I joined with the 18 back in 84, we had a full classroom.
So someone was teaching you the content.
Teaching us on the board week after week. It's a big change.
Also.
So there's a lot of self-learning. So we did that. We'd have a team of 2. My partner always went to sleep, but that's okay. So
I think that's what my partner says about me.
They put you to sleep, those Carrels. When I had almost finished that course, they announced 24 command slots on the 747. After they'd finished telling us
there was going to be no commands.
And giving notices to leave. And that's so much like a big organisation. It's because everything's in aviation so unpredictable. So then I said to my boss at the time, what happens if I don't pass I was trying to desperately get to the 747 then, see? What if I don't pass the ground school? He said, we'll bump you to second officer on the 767. That would be the lowest of the lows.
That's the bottom rank in the
So
airline.
I did it, and then I did 6 weeks on the line, and I had a bid in for the 747 command, and then I did 747.
Did you?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I did effectively 11 months of training in 1 year. Nearly killed me because it was studying's, it's all consuming, the training programs.
And command training was brutal in those days, wasn't it? There wasn't a lot of light and fluff. It was hard work.
So I'd done the endorsement for 4 months. I'd done 6 weeks on the line as a first officer, and then I started my command training.
I did not know that. So in fact, another for the list of pioneering was the first jumbo captain as well.
Sorry, that was command on the 767.
So I went from
second officer classic 74, FO classic 747.
Yeah, 76
then across
FO.
to the 76 because I was going to get rid of the 74, FO for a bid line, and then captain because I couldn't get a slot on the 747 then, and then I had to wait 23 years to get back to the 747. But I loved the 767.
Had the Deborah Lawrie case been going on in the background, or were you aware of that? It was just
I'm just not aware of anything hopeless, really.
But no, not at all. I think that's a really important thing. We can get caught up in the minutiae of things that may or may not affect us. And as you said, they never affected you, so it just washed over you. And
it did. I think one of the really important things is to if you get all that and you see it, just surround yourself with people that are positive, that talk about only positive outcomes. If you sound surrounded by people say you can't do that and you can't do this, well, maybe you won't try.
Well, there's the life lesson just there, just there. So I don't need to ask any more questions about that. So we spent lots of time on the 76 in Melbourne. We did eventually we did domestic flying on the 767, where you all used to sit around in that bar in Melbourne, that Silverchair bar, drinking beer. And that was a big part of who we were as an airline, wasn't it? And so you just went along and had your glass of wine instead of your 6 beers like everybody else? Or?
Yeah, well, if you don't go, as I said before, they talk about you. That's what they say. If you don't come along, we'll talk about you. So we always made sure everybody showed up, even internationally and domestic, everywhere, because that was the time you could down tools and have a little whinge with each other because you have a deep understanding of your job. You can't go home and really talk about those things because they don't know what we do.
Well, we used to talk a lot of operational stuff as well, didn't we? We learned from each other by sitting around with that social, which has disappeared to a certain extent now, which is unfortunate. But
it has because the slips are a lot shorter.
We work harder now.
And we don't often go to briefings together. The briefing rooms are often gone in international ports. But it's mainly, I think, the advent of technology puts people in their room with their you're so connected to family, whereas we were never connected to family. You had to, I remember in Singapore, you bought a phone card and you had to queue up to use a telephone and it was so expensive. You did it maybe once a day or once every 2 days. So you set aside that time and the rest of the time you sought out companionship with your crew because you're away for 14 days. And the era before me were away for 3 weeks.
With no contact at home.
No contact, really.
They didn't bring home for 3 weeks.
Occasional call. Yeah, that's right.
Did you ever sense that things were changing in the airline? You know, that we were becoming more progressive. We were more family friendly. We were, we had these women now who are flying our airplanes around the world. Was there ever a light bulb moment going, yeah, now I get it. This is going to pave the career for the girls to follow me? Or you just never had that issue? You never really fit?
No. Good. A bit selfish, isn't it?
No, it's not at all.
It's sort of just, you just plod your own battle.
Yep.
And if you make it better for those behind, well, that's an added benefit. But I don't think if you're honest, you try to do something to achieve that. You're really doing what you love to do. And if others benefit behind you, that's terrific. For example, when I had my first son, my child, there'd been no women captains.
Zero.
So there'd been no women pilots having children. So there was no policy for maternity leave. They didn't know what to do with you, sort of thing. They were really good with it. Qantas was exceptional in dealing with something that they hadn't had to think about. Because I didn't want to make waves. I just wanted to be one of the pilots. You don't want to be different. But then I had this little issue that
I now had a son at home that I needed to be.
I couldn't fly when pregnant.
Yeah.
And so the whole policy had to be formed about radiation. I did a paper on radiation as well to help the union formulate a maternity policy. It became a parental leave instead of, I said maternity leave, which then became, well, there's men too. So what you do unconsciously can become helpful to the women behind who want families.
So your husband, he was the primary caregiver for a lot of the time, I guess.
Yes.
He stayed at home.
Well, I went on a 50%. Well, Qantas formulated a carers line, and we did that with the union. And that was I did anywhere from 50% up you could do, 50, 60, 70. So I nominated 50%, which effectively was an overnight Singapore once a fortnight.
Mm-hmm. So a 3-day trip up to Singapore and back.
Yeah, and if I went to Tokyo, it was my favourite, if you could get it.
Yeah.
So I would go Cairns, Hong Kong, or Cairns somewhere, and I'd take James and my husband with me. So I would leave them in Cairns.
Go up to
I'd do the
Asia
overnight Tokyo and back, or Hong Kong and back, back in Cairns for the night. And sometimes I put them in our hotel, which is a nice one for an extra night. And other times I'd leave them at the backpackers because I thought it was a good all-round education for my son to see, I didn't want him to be privileged. And we were privileged
absolutely,
in places that we were able to stay.
Absolutely.
But that can be a little overwhelming all the time because we travelled together a lot. So my spare money went to paying for them to come as far as they could. So we still were a family.
What an amazing opportunity.
You accept less pay. It depends what's important.
Yes.
And women say, well, you don't have to do that. You can work full time, and some it works well for.
Yes.
It's just what you want to do.
Absolutely. So we can continue to talk about first. They go on and on and on with you, and you keep saying, oh, well, just how it was. So let's talk about last then. So the last jumbo left Australia. You were part of that crew that ferried the last jumbo. That was sad. Were you sad when that happened?
Oh, yes, because, there was a time of turmoil, wasn't it? It wasn't just the last aircraft. It was a really serious threat to aviation and everybody's career. So with COVID in earlier 3 or 4 months before, we were almost given 6 weeks to decide whether we would leave or stay.
Yep.
And that wouldn't take effect for another 7 months till the end of December, that 2020.
Yes.
And that was I remember sitting there till 11:15 at night, still trying to figure out, will I or won't I?
And were you ready to retire?
No, nobody's ready to retire. And it was a matter of balancing, is Qantas going to survive this?
Yep.
Is any airline going to survive?
We didn't know.
This?
I don't.
How long's it going to take? How long's a piece of string?
Yeah, it was horrible that time in our careers.
So, but when I took the plane over, so I was very actually not devastated or sad, but quite happy to be there to take the plane over. I mean, you accept the situation you have. We'd gone through that tough COVID beginning.
Yes.
And we were at airports where there were we saw 5 Chinese people in white suits who were pilots. And the terminal was completely empty. There was like one person there to check us in, and there were 6 of us. And I've never seen an international airport in Sydney empty.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So it was really weird feelings.
Absolutely.
So that was all quite, profound. So when we got to the desert and left the plane there after the departure itself, we'd practiced that in the simulator.
Did it look that good on the simulator as it does on flight radar?
Well, I didn't see it in the simulator as we saw it on
it was incredible,
flight radar.
Wasn't it?
So the boys had done practice before loading 200 waypoints in. So they started that several hours before the flight.
If anyone doesn't know, if you go and have a look at flight radar of the last Qantas jumbo departure, off the coast of Sydney, there's a magnificent kangaroo drawn in the sky, which Sharelle was a part of the crew that ferried that aeroplane from Australia. So we just pick it up now. We're talking about loading the FMC. So they didn't upload the route. Somebody had to physically.
Physically, that's right. None of the automatic uploading business.
Yes.
Bit like the 767. You put it
good old days where Latin longs.
Yeah. And then they had to check it because imagine if one of the waypoints was wrong,
and you go steering off in the wrong direction
or something. Yes. And there were all sorts of people saying why we had it in a certain spot. But we had it in a certain spot because of restricted airspace. Yep. And it's quite a difficult thing to draw. And we had 5 pages of instructions that we had to submit to Department CASA, Civil Aviation Safety Authority, saying exactly what we were going to do and when, to the point of select flap 5, check flap 5, slow speed to 180, flap 10, descent. Everything was stated on the flight deck, repeated and done. It was quite strict. But when you did the tail, you had to come back. We had to extend flat. So you have to be below 20,000 feet to extend flat in the 747.
And this is a 400-ton jumbo, which you're ferrying to the desert.
It's max weight. It's full of fuel. We had an extra, I think, 12-ton to do the Kangaroo.
Is that what it cost?
Yeah, and to do the flyby Sydney Harbour down to Shell Harbour and then go and do the Kangaroo and then fly to LA. So we were very heavy. And so we did the flyby of the harbour and everything was done at flaps 20, which was the takeoff flap.
Yes.
And the gear was up. So that was to slow it down, but it was still fast because the heavier you are, of course, the faster you have to fly.
It's awesome, isn't it?
And so doing the Kangaroo, you had to be at below 20,000 to put the flaps out. So and to go around the corner, you had to put the flaps out a lot to limit the turn radius. And then when you did the straightaways on the tail, you'd accelerate and take all the flap up again, accelerate, and then we could climb up to 30,000 feet and then we descend again. And so it was quite busy on the flight deck to doing that Kangaroo. But my favourite bit was doing the fly up the harbour. It was
a nice day like today.
It was.
Yeah,
in fact, the simulator we practiced and the boss behind me, they're always behind you, making sure everybody wants to be the captain.
Somebody's always looking over your shoulder.
There's about 4 captains, And so they're telling me now in the simulator, we just want to fly up to Maroubra. And I said, where's Maroubra? Because I'm not from, I'm down the south coast.
Well.
And in the simulator, it's just a shadow. So we practiced where everything was. And so you've got to get it right up around Bondi Beach and took 5 miles to turn around and go back up Sydney Harbour. So it's because we're so fast.
Yeah.
And then 1 second you're over Rose Bay and the next second the Opera House and it feels like a second later you're over the Harbour Bridge. And there were maybe, I think, 7 or 8 helicopters in the air filming. And, of course, we had to go over the Harbour Bridge and then climb 500 feet because we had to go over North Sydney and turn around. And, of course, ATC, Air Traffic Control, were giving us that wonderful spiel about how wonderful Qantas was and how much they're going to miss us and the 747, and that went on. And I'm trying to get a clearance to climb 500 feet
so we don't hit the city,
because before we can climb, all the helicopters had to be cleared to climb. Yeah. So it was quite busy where we were, nice on the ground looking, but it was busy on the deck. And then when I left it at Mojave Desert, when we left it as a crew, at Mojave Desert, when we got in the crew bus to go back to LA to overnight, I left behind a perfectly serviceable aeroplane that could have just kept flying year after year. I felt like I dropped my kid off at preschool and I was going to leave him there. And never go back. That's how I felt.
Well, on the classic jumbo, the flight engineer, when we'd pull up at the gate, he'd go finish with engine. So that's, you parked at the Mojave Desert and you'd finish with the aeroplane.
And everybody got to do I know it was a bit, everybody got to do a fuel control switch to cut off each engine, each pilot.
And were you proud? Well, I know the answer to that. Of course you were. So that sense of pride must have been immense. Then looking back over your airline career saying, what I've achieved, I'm pretty happy that I'm happy now to go on and start the next phase of my life.
Not really.
You would have loved flying the 780. It's a great
Just
airplane.
Keep going. I had notes on all the 380. I'd filled a book already on all the systems of the 380, ready to sort of decide whether to go to the 380 or the 78.
The 78
because the 74 was being finished again. The 76 got finished. The Classic was finished. Everything I went on.
We've got a dying fleet.
Finished.
I know, I understand that absolutely.
So I was sort of and I've done a few sim rides to decide which plane I would go on to. So it was not what I expected.
Yeah.
So I wasn't ready. No, I don't think anyone's ever ready to stop what you love doing.
Are you content with that part of your life is now closed? Because we're going to talk about what you're up to now. So
I have to deal with that.
I know
I had no choice. I had a choice, but at the end, you've got to retire at some point, be it medical, be it age, be it, it's difficult, but you just have to. You have to move on. You have to give up. We're so used to studying and achieving, and you can't just sit around. You have to set the next target, don't you?
Have you got a bookshelf full of 767 manuals at home?
I do. I got them up there.
I
I've got all my notes.
Out, of course.
I've got a couple of classic ones too.
Have you?
Yeah, and I've got my old notes, and they're all sitting there. I said, you never know. No, they're just
sitting there.
In fact, I applied to Virgin during COVID, and I filled in the application form, and I only had I think 20 hours twin time, but I had 25,000 hours jet time, and they said, I wasn't what they were looking for. So I was a bit disappointed at that.
That's okay. So what are you doing now, Sharelle?
What am I doing now? Well,
You still got a motorbike, more importantly?
yes, I've got my motorbike. I went and bought a little plane. So I've got an RV9, which is an experimental,
Yeah.
but it's only 2 years old. So
You didn't build it though?
no, I bought it from a lovely man, Glenn, in Western Australia. And I took an engineer with me. You learn to be fastidious, right?
When it's your own aeroplane.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because when I got into a light plane after jets, everything vibrates. I mean, on a jet, everything sits beautifully at 870 degrees. It's all. But on a light aeroplane with a propeller, everything's vibrating. I said, is this normal? Is this normal?
Noises and what the heck's that?
So it took me about 3 years to get used to flying little planes. And then I went and got a maintenance engineer ticket with Padstow TAFE. Took 1.5 years with lots of young kids learning to be engineers, for aircraft engineers. I'm not licensed, but I was taught the procedures and the safety. And I did a bit of time with friends in the hangar in Bathurst learning doing tyres and brakes and engine checks so that I could be more knowledgeable with my aircraft, because we're always seeking to learn in our careers. And I just wanted to keep that going. So then I learned as much as possible about my plane. So I work on it myself to the limit I'm allowed to. And then I joined the Aero Club at Mudgee, because it's up in Mudgee. And I do some lectures for the Aero Club. And we did one for CASA recently on fuel management and fuel starvation. And we try and use we have knowledge that it's important to impart that to make safer pilots. So I really felt like I needed to do it. So then I got my instructor rating back, which I had many years ago as an instructor back in the 80s. So I refreshed that, and that took a while. It's more study.
Yep.
And then I was kindly given a job. I just wanted to work one day. I didn't want to go back to full-time. Be careful what you wish for.
Oh, no, it becomes like a real job again.
Yeah. So I used to enjoy the drive for an hour in the country to the airport and back, and then just taught 1 day a week and theory, and I just really enjoy it.
You realise how inadequate you make me feel? I mean,
what are you doing?
Well, I haven't done a fraction of the things you've done, and you're far more energy and vigour and passion that I think I've ever had, which is incredible. Sharelle, it's just amazing. I really want you to understand how important you are to our industry, not as a woman, but certainly that's part of it, but as a pioneer, as a leader, as somebody who's passionate about our industry, who's determined to inspire the kids, which is really important, because in the old days they'd come into the flight deck because the door wasn't locked. Now they don't actually see. My children have never been on the flight deck when I've been flying an aeroplane. They just don't see that. So I thank you on behalf of our industry for inspiring the next generation. I thank you for being you, and I thank you for coming and speaking to us today. So folks, that's Captain Sharelle Quinn, and you've been listening to Stick With It.